Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Critical Wave Theory, where I talk about a lot of different subjects. And today we're going to be talking about cosmic curiosities, I guess you might say. And basically, I'm going to explore the mysteries of the universe and the curious questions that keep us up at night. So, today I'm tackling a mind bending scenario. What would happen if the sun, the very heart of our solar system, disappeared for just 1 second, or maybe if something just totally obscured all of the light from the sun, or even most of it? Would it be a cosmic hiccup or the beginnings of a celestial catastrophe? So let's dive into that. And I am not an expert, I'm not a scientist of really any type, but I did a little digging on this, and this is what I've gathered. Of course, if you have a contrary view, I suppose you can get at me with that if you want, or maybe create your own podcast episode to counter this one. But this is what I've gathered from you know looking into this question, this hypothetical. So, what's the setup here? First, let's break it down. The sun is essential not just for light, but heat also, and for the stability of our entire solar system, right? Light from the sun takes about 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach Earth, give or take a few. So, if the sun vanished, we wouldn't notice right away, or something like that. It would take a while. I guess apparently 8 minutes and 20 seconds. This delay gives us a fascinating look at the whole uh, process of how the sun works, I guess, in terms of generating light for us, and we get to ponder the nature, the role of time, the nature of time and light in our universe. So imagine for a moment that 8 minutes after the sun disappeared, Earth plunges into total darkness. What would that look and feel like? So, I mean, you could probably imagine the sudden silence and darkness and all that. There's if I was doing a sound design thing here, I would include something that created the sensation of darkness and silence. It would have you totally immersed. But it's just me talking to this microphone. So for 1 second, imagine life as we know it would pause. But what happens after? Let's explore the ripple effects. The immediate consequences, first up, light, of course, would be impacted. That's sort of obvious. If the sun disappeared for a second, Earth would experience a brief blackout. Think of it as a global eclipse, but one that covers every corner of the planet. The effect wouldn't be catastrophic necessarily, but it would be unsettling, or at least that's what I've gathered. It almost seems like it would be catastrophic, though, right? And not just for the phenomenon. If you're driving and all of the light goes out, and you suddenly, you don't have your headlights on, and you're like, "Whoa, I can't see anymore." Like, that could be catastrophic, but it seems like there'd be some other consequences, but maybe not so much. So imagine being outdoors and seeing the sky go pitch black and instantly back to daylight, sort of a cosmic flicker. So you really have to wonder. Again, I'm not an astrophysicist here, but would it really be uh, a quick thing that just didn't really have that much of an effect, or would there be some sort of, I guess, unforeseen, perhaps almost all-encompassing element of chaos? I don't know for sure. I do know that things like apparently the moon has an impact on the tides and things like that. I would imagine that there could at least be some possibility for a catastrophic thing, but from what I've looked at. There's no clear indication that anything truly mind-boggling would happen, other than we'd be like taken aback. So in that moment, from what I understand, most of us wouldn't even register the change, or our eyes are not fast enough to fully adjust. But solar panels worldwide would momentarily stop producing energy, and there could be disruptions to GPS systems and shortwave radios. So it's a fascinating thought experiment, but the 1 second interruption apparently wouldn't leave as many lasting marks as one might think. So I guess this gets at the science of darkness. So let's take this moment of darkness deeper and think about it. Have you ever wondered how complete darkness affects the human body and mind? I mean, even aside from this thought experiment, have you, well, I'm sure some of you have been in situations where you were, I guess, in a moment of exaggerated darkness, you might say. Like maybe got locked in a basement or something. I don't know. Something crazy might have happened to you. Um, But they say that prolonged darkness can disrupt circadian rhythms, lead to heightened anxiety, and even cause hallucinations. But for just a second, it's more about the psychological jolt, I suppose, you know? So I do wonder about would there be a psychological component to it that would be more long term, even if the more overtly physical change wouldn't be severe? Although the psychological and the physical kind of are interlinked, I suppose. We have psychology, we have a mind because we have a physical brain, and we interact with the physical environment around us, and yada yada yada. But it's interesting to ponder just what sort of psychological impact uh, a moment of darkness might have. So humans are wired to fear sudden changes in light. It's an evolutionary response tied to survival. So, a global blackout, even for a second, who knows, maybe it could spark confusion and fear on a mass scale. It's not about the darkness itself, but the uncertainty that it creates. People might be sort of panicked about what's going on, and they might hit the flip out switch, so to speak, and go into panic mode. Who knows? And well, here's a more interesting one, and this one sounds like it has more to do with possible long term negative effect from the event. So, what about the gravitational impacts of what we're talking about here? Here's where it gets more fascinating, potentially, well, on the issue of gravity. Just like light, gravitational effects from the sun take about 8 minutes to reach us, at least from what I understand. I don't happen to have Neil deGrasse Tyson here to talk to at the moment, although, yes, I will brag that I have spoken to him before for about 20 minutes. But he's not here right now, so I can't consult his expertise. But if the sun disappeared for a second, Earth and other planets would briefly travel in straight lines instead of their usual orbits. At least that's that's what is apparent. Once the sun reappeared, though, its gravity would apparently snap everything back into place. So I guess one question is, would we notice? Probably not, but astronomers would detect subtle changes in planetary trajectories over time. And I don't know enough about that, about the possible long term effects of things being momentarily put out of whack. But, it is an interesting question. Like, how much could they be corrected, and all that? Would there be enough of a change that it would register as being significant? And I guess you get into astronomy at that point too. So think of it like pulling a marble out of a bowl for a moment, and then dropping it back in. the marble will wobble before it settles, probably. And these perturbations might not matter now, but over a million years, maybe they would. Maybe they could lead to instability in the solar system. I'm not sure. You know, I'm not an expert, but it's food for thought. And there are also some philosophical questions that come into play when it comes to the way that we perceive light and darkness. So let's zoom out. What does this thought experiment teach us about our relationship with the cosmos? Many ancient cultures turned to religion to explain cosmic phenomena. A disappearing sun might have been seen as an omen or a divine intervention. Who knows? Maybe people would have even gone to war over something like that, or just totally changed their routine. I mean, who knows what the long term effects would be, or even or even some of the short term ones. And on a micro scale, you know, it's perhaps even harder to predict in some ways. So today's science helps us understand these scenarios, but we're still left with existential questions. What is our place in the universe? How fragile is life on Earth? You know, I think even these, simple thought experiments might make us examine that. So when I looked up and saw, you know, oh, this is a quote actually that I'm going to read here that I wrote down as part of my notes. So this is an astronaut talking about the overview effect, which is what happens when you see the Earth from the moon or presumably somewhere else in space. So this fellow said, when I looked up and saw the Earth coming up on this very stark, beat up moon horizon, I was immediately almost overcome with the thought, here we came all this way to the moon, and yet the most significant thing we're seeing is our home planet, the Earth. So, that's a sort of perspective that kind of I think could inform the topic of, how the sun and gravity and all that stuff can affect our life and our understanding of it, the nature of the planet when we learn more about it. It both becomes more mysterious and less mysterious at the same time. It's really kind of strange because once you open the door to, examining the nature of existence, sure, you could become jaded, but there are also just more questions. And, if you've got that sort of mind, you'll be pondering these things uh, to a large degree, and maybe you'll create a podcast episode about it and stuff like that. So I also looked in just for fun as sort of a corollary. I think that's how that word is pronounced. But as as an additional thing, I looked into the effects of complete darkness, including how it disrupts our circadian rhythms. So the absence of light interferes with the body's internal clock, aka the circadian rhythm, which relies on light cues to regulate sleep wake cycles. It gives us our sense of time and things like that. So prolonged darkness can lead to irregular sleep patterns, insomnia, or hypersomnia, which is excessive sleeping. These are considered circadian rhythm sleep disorders. So there are definitely psychological effects related to this too. The short term would be anxiety, disorientation, and difficulty focusing on things. Those would be common within hours of being in darkness. It's possible you'd have a harder time knowing where you are too, because you're disoriented. So there might be a sense of, who am I? What's my identity too, because we're dealing with the delicate mind states of a brain that's not, at its optimal condition. And the long term effects, they could include extended hallucinations, heightened emotional responses, paranoia, or depression. So, I mean, all of these things are potentially linked. The disorientation could lead to, all of these things, the anxiety, difficulty focusing, all of these things could be interlinked in some way. And the lack of visual stimuli forces the brain to compensate, which can produce vivid mental images or illusions. Maybe, well, have you ever like closed your eye after, looking into the sun? You get these weird patterns that sort of catch your eye when you're closing your eyes, like these weird light patterns and stuff. That's another part of it too. Like the mind can play tricks on you based on what you're seeing. If you're also just if you're regularly in a sort of darkened room and you suddenly see something kind of bright, it it might it might freak you out or something like that. Like if a sudden light appears, it might startle you. It might be, it might just seem freaky to you. And there are all kinds of, interesting visual images that relate to light and darkness. And I suppose there could also be physical changes of, prolonged exposure to the dark. Melatonin production increases in the absence of light, which may cause excessive sleepiness. Vitamin D deficiency can occur over weeks due to lack of sunlight exposure, leading to bone and immune health issues. Over time, the body might also become metabolic or might reduce metabolic activity in response to the absence of external stimuli. And, there's a neurological impact as well. Without visual input, the brain may experience reduced activity in areas tied to processing visual information. There's something that is called neuroplasticity that may kick in, with other senses like hearing and touch becoming heightened. And there's another interesting question too: how long can a person last without light? So that could be an interesting topic, a subtopic. Most people can endure complete darkness for several hours to a few days without severe effects, though discomfort, anxiety, and disorientation may arise within the first 24 hours. That could be fun. So, what about long-term tolerance when we're getting to into weeks or even longer? Studies involving cave environments or sensory deprivation chambers suggest that people can survive for weeks in darkness, but mental health and cognitive functioning deteriorate significantly. Participants often report losing track of time, experiencing mood swings, and developing psychological distress. So, there are also some extreme cases. Prolonged isolation in darkness, months or more, can lead to irreversible psychological and physiological effects, although rare instances of survival have been documented with significant health repercussions. So, is this similar to sensory deprivation that I'm talking about here? Yes, the experience of complete darkness is closely related to sensory deprivation, as it removes a critical sensory input, which is vision. So, yeah, you could, if you have sensory deprivation, you can have brain problems, or whatever you want to call them. The brain will be compensating for missing input. Like I said, it could result in hallucinations or heightened activity and other senses. There can be a lot of anxiety, disorientation, and altered perceptions of time. That is definitely a thing that happens. So yeah, fun stuff to think about, and hopefully none of you out there have ever been in this sort of situation. So yeah, like I've said, I'm I'm a bit curious about this sort of stuff, and I think science explains it better than a lot of other things. Religions don't seem very convincing compared against scientific evidence provided by researchers all across various fields, including physics, mathematics, biology, chemistry, astronomy, geology, psychology, sociology, anthropology, archaeology, history, literature, languages, philosophy, law, political economy, technology, engineering, medicine, healthcare, education, social services, humanities, arts, sports, games, entertainment, media, communication devices, computers, robots, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented realities, mixed realities, gaming, VR, AR immersive experiences, video streaming services, esports leagues, competitions, tournaments, championship finals, awards, trophies, medals, certificates, diplomas, degrees, licenses, certifications, badges, tattoos, stickers, pins, patches, flags, coats, hats, scarves, shirts, dresses, pants, skirts, shorts, leggings, socks, gloves, mittens, boots, shoes, sneakers, sandals, flip flops, boots, loafers, slip ons, or heels. I think all of those things explain life better than I think religion does. So that's me that's me dissing religion yet again. That's part of my philosophical quest in life, I guess, is to debunk fantastical, nonsensical claims, and it's not made me the most popular person on the planet. So, I like to look at events and phenomena that are real with a perspective that is real, and imagination can be fine. It can challenge our understanding and all that kind of stuff. It can, of course, lead to performance of the arts, and it kind of inspires people to have science in the first place because we're pondering the nature of the universe. But at the end of the day, being able to deal with tangible reality is really one of the main things that matters the most in life. And if you deal too much with fantasy elements and just have a completely factually incorrect understanding of things, well, I think that's going to lead you down a darkened path. You're gonna put too much faith in things that just are not true, and you're gonna treat the fake as if it's the real, and you're really not going to understand the nature of life, the nature of the universe, and your place in it. You're going to have like a false identity almost, uh, pinning your very existence on things that don't really purely exist in any sense other than like a cultural uh, sort of underpinning. You're going to be pinned down by your own beliefs, by having nothing that's really there to guide you. You're just going to be actually in some ways, in some cases, making things up on the spot. And that's not necessarily that bad of a thing, but at the end of the day, if you're able to, as the saying goes, if you're able to believe in absurdities, you might more easily be able to commit atrocities. That's really one of the things that I think we found out throughout history, is that a lot of a lot of times, crazy violence and things have gone hand in hand with crazy levels of stupidity, or whatever you want to call them. Just lack of imagination that is somehow tied with imaginary things. And there's like I would say, an inherent clash between those two things. Like if you have a limited imagination, yet you got imagination crammed in your brain, it's not going to know how to cope with all of that. And if you're learning that the imaginary things are purely real and purely true, and that they are the main things that matter in life, well, where does that leave you? You might be rigidly and rabidly defending those things, you know, instead of actively trying to poke holes in them, which is what a person with critical thinking does. That's why one of the main things that scientists do throughout their careers is they test their theories to make sure that they are actually true. And if they're not, they might either totally abandon the theory or at least augment it with with the understanding that comes from having the new information that they attained. So anyway, on that note, the sun disappearing for a second reminds us of the delicate balance that sustains life. It's a humbling thought, and one of them that underscores the importance of scientific curiosity. So, what if the sun disappeared for just a second then? The universe would give us a momentary glimpse of its unpredictable nature, a fleeting reminder of how interconnected and fragile our systems truly are. It's a cosmic hiccup, yes, but one that could teach us to ponder ourselves and our world. So, thank you for tuning into Critical Wave Theory, where we look into cosmic curiosities sometimes, and sometimes we do some lowbrow stuff like movie reviews or something like that. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your fellow stargazers. Not that I'm always dealing with scientific issues or thought experiments, but this time I am. So until next time, keep looking up and stay curious and all that stuff. And today's episode was brought to you by Your Endless Curiosity. Stay connected with this show for more interstellar inquiries or, you know, movie reviews or whatever the hell I do. So, all right.